Welcome to another artist chat with Music for Your Inbox. I'm one of Music for Your Inbox's co-directors, Jennifer Bewerse, and today I'll be talking with our other co-director, Cassia Streb, about this month's art, which is called FluxConcert and is a Fluxus-inspired art pairing. So let me get Cassia invited, and then we will chat.
Hey!
Hi there! Nice to see you.
Nice to see you too. So I was just explaining how today we're going to talk about this month's art, FluxConcert, and we're the ones talking about it because this is our passion baby project that we've been working on for, is it over 2 years or about 2 years at this point, or at least over a year, probably close to 2 years.
I mean, I have, I found somewhere a bunch of Post-it notes that we had written ideas on and then kind of created like a way of sorting them, and then we made like a video that I think would take 45 minutes to an hour to watch.
Well, let's pause and talk about Fluxus a little bit, create some context for people who might not know what Fluxus is. And I thought it might be nice to like also describe why Fluxus has been really important to us as artists. So you jump in and tell me if I'm getting any of this wrong, because this is like from my head, but like Fluxus was a movement in the 60s and 70s that was founded by various people competing accounts on who started it, because it was kind of a collective emerging movement where artists worked in all of these really paradoxical ways, where they were like anti-commercial but wanted people to come and see their things and sold their art, and they were anti-art but they were making art. And it was just a lot of kind of conceptual and art that was like really responding to the moment, including things like elevating the everyday, or critiquing what a concert could or couldn't be, or art could or couldn't be. And it was just an international, super diverse, really wild time in art making.
Yeah, it sort of felt kind of like chaotic, I think, when I think about that. And I think about how the people making the art weren't kind of imagining how the world would look at them in the future, kind of thing. Like it was very much of the moment, and it wasn't looking in the rearview mirror. It was looking straight ahead. Yeah. And I also think that we talk about, oh, Fluxus is a movement, but I'm not certain that the artists in that moment were aware that they were in something, and that it was really history looking back and sort of analyzing, musicologists looking at all of the materials that were created and sort of were like, oh, well, we're just going to organize this stuff into this thing. I mean, they were certainly calling themselves Fluxus artists, but that's why when you're talking about like, oh, there's these competing theories and this and that, and I kind of love that it's not, organized and stuff, and it reminds me a lot of when you're learning a foreign language and they talk about grammar rules. And the people speaking the language aren't aware of the rules, like especially as the languages were evolving, because people were like, I'm just saying this word because it's the word. And then later on, we go and study language, and we were like, oh, well, this is the rule. And then when you learn in foreign language, they say, well, now the rule gets broken. And it's like, well, it's not being broken. It actually wasn't a rule. It's just a way that we have of organizing and talking about this. And it feels really similar with Fluxus, where we're, it's like, well, is it people who are rejecting the traditional concert hall? And it's like, well, yes, always, except for these 300 very special cases where people really wanted it to be a concert. So, I think that's sort of kind of like a very brief history. Should we mention some years and cities?
Just to go for it. The 60s and 70s is kind of the ballpark that I think is often considered years wise. And then
and then there's sort of people in New York kind of who were physically in close proximity to each other, who were able to have these happenings and events where multiple people would be at those events. And then there's, of course, people were living all over, but I guess I kind of think about,
there's a big presence in Japan, big presence in Germany.
Yeah, just these sort of pockets, I suppose, but they're happening simultaneously, and there is some interconnectivity. I mean, this is not like horse and buggy times. Like, it's not like people have no idea. They're flying to these other places. They're visiting. Some of these artists are coming to the United States and then going back to Japan and have these relationships between these countries. And so it's not really something that is particularly connected to, I think, like a national kind of boundary. It's more of an artistic movement.
Yeah, and one really important feature that is important, especially to the film we've made, is this use of something called text scores, which are these mostly super short, almost poem-like descriptions for action. And they're kind of considered scores, which in music we would think of scores like as, notes written on the page or whatever. I mean, obviously Music for Inbox, you've seen our stuff. It's like way past notes on a page. But if you're thinking about, written music, these are a real departure from that, where it was more of like written actions. And the task of the performer was to kind of just do the action, was not to like flourish it or interpret, like create like a romantic musical gesture out of it, to like very, kind of earnestly and genuinely engage in this action. And sometimes those actions were really vague or impossible. There's one, I don't remember who wrote it, where you're supposed to get pregnant with twins and be pregnant for 18 months. And that's the score, and how, that can't exist necessarily in real, not with current technology.
Thankfully, is all I'm going to say.
So some of these pieces kind of like just live in our imaginations, and then some are very literal, like one of the pieces we did called Lighting Piece by Yoko Ono, where this whole entire score is light a match and watch it till it goes out. So it's very literal and very kind of, this is what you do. But then the kind of a magic emerges from doing it, where, not to jump ahead, but like we realized every match lasts a radically different length of time until it goes out. Some of them were out in 10 seconds, and some of them took over 2 minutes to go out. And this kind of like magic of doing the task and seeing kind of what you could never have imagined unfolds is one of my favorite things about these scores.
Yeah, I think that we both respond to this part of what happens inside your brain when you read something, and when you I have this yoga teacher who she'll say, like, you can participate in the class, or you can just lie on the mat and imagine you're doing the class, and you'll get 30%. And she's got this theory that, you're if you imagine you're doing something, your body kind of thinks you've done it, sort of thing. So I think that's what we really enjoy, is this sort of 30% of imagining what clearly that's not a statistical number. It's just what a yoga teacher's saying. But I think we like how it feels in our brains to think about imagining doing this thing. But I think what also gets us excited about this stuff is that when you actually do it, something different happens. And that is the magic. That's what we love about Fluxus music, and keeps bringing us back to it.
Yeah.
Because I think there was a piece that, I'm trying to remember if it was Fluxus or not. I think it was called like Candle Jump, that we did years ago in a live performance, and you had to light a candle and jump with it and make the candle stay lit. Like, you couldn't let the candle go out, kind of thing. And just like, you can imagine doing that, but then to actually light a candle, hold it, and jump as far as you can without it going out, you're really trying to do this thing, and it becomes this great performance because you forget you're not acting.
Right.
And you're not performing, and you're actually not supposed to be any good at it, because it's more like, well, what happens? And so I think we really picked a lot of pieces in this video that we made for Music for Your Inbox, where we kind of imagined what the outcome would be, but then we didn't know, and we left enough squishiness in what we were doing in our plan that we would be okay with whatever happened.
The opening for like the kind of magic and surprise of these pieces. And I feel like what has been like really important to me about Fluxus in my kind of personal artistic like life is how they kind of ask you to really trust like the process and the people that you'll be sharing that with, because of this unknown factor of like what will actually happen. And if you get too like tied up into controlling exactly what you'll do in a lot of these pieces, you kind of squish out the magic. Or if you get too worried about like, oh, are people having a good time listening to this, like, you really squish it. And it's like this kind of trust of like, I'm going to do the thing, and I'm going to do it, unconsciously, genuinely, and that's kind of where everything unfolds. There was this piece we did at a live performance once. I performed called Broom. I think it was called Broom Music, where the whole score is like sweeping dust sweepings, or dustpan dust sweepings, or whatever. So it's very open, and I was sweeping up these pieces of a broken violin from a previous performance, which you can only imagine. And in my head, when, I couldn't practice it because we broke the violin once.
Right.
So I wasn't going to get to practice sweeping up a broken violin. And in my head, I was going to sweep it up, put it in the dustpan, and then walk off stage with the dustpan full of broken violin parts. But in reality, I couldn't fit them all in the dustpan. So I would sweep everything up into the dustpan, carefully lift it off the ground, and then one piece would fall out. And I just kept sweeping, just trying to get the sweepings into the pan. And I think it lasted way longer than any of us thought it would. And there's a part of me that could have been really worried everyone was bored out of their minds. But in just trusting the process, what really happened is everyone was on the edge of their seats. Can she, you'd watch me carefully get the scroll in finally to the dustpan and lift it slowly, and it would fall, and people would be like, oh.
Oh, yeah, no, he was crushing. I mean, there was an emotional arc to that story.
New Music Sports or something.
Yeah. Yeah, well, we were rooting for you, and this burial of this violin somehow. It was, but you had to be the kind of performer who would be committed to that, because also as an audience member, we would have accepted you just sort of saying well, that was enough of that, y'all, and just sort of wandering off stage with some pieces of violin traipsing behind you. But I felt like that was it was a really powerful performance, and it's that kind of commitment that we're bringing to this film, this real honesty and what we consider authentic performance practice of Fluxus music.
For Fluxus.
I know, I'm saying that sort of tongue in cheek. So, yeah, I mean, we keep talking about, what happens to your brain when you read this music, but what we're referring to specifically is this Fluxus workbook, which is a publication that is, I think it's free online, and there's a huge list, an index at the front, and names of composers, of people who've contributed, and they've consented to being included in it, which is another thing we love at Music for Your Inbox. And they've also consented to have their works performed in a FluxConcert kind of context, which is the name of this film. And so that's where we got the source materials for this particular video, was that we read through the Fluxus workbook, and we were pulling out pieces that we thought would lend themselves really well to being filmed. So some of these pieces are great for a different project. So that was kind of our limiting parameter, was what could we do really well that was being filmed. And then we started to get kind of into this idea of things that are black and white, and sort of followed that for a while of what pieces would do well in black and white, and then broke the rules of that a little bit, and then we went through and we were looking for some kinds of different composers. We wanted to make sure that we weren't just doing one composer, because you can kind of get stuck on a page in that book, right? And you can kind of get stuck in, there's that whole orange events section that Southland Ensemble did, where there's just all these orange events, right? You could make a film just about that. And I remember in the past when we've curated shows like this with other people, we thought about what about a show where everything is wood and flames, or everything is metal and plastic, or just different ways of sorting, so that it isn't actually kind of all over the place, so that you actually are sort of saying something about a specific thing, or helping people to focus their attention on something. So we started out with a black and white idea, and got our note cards on the ground, or our post-it. I think they were note cards, actually. They weren't post-its, because we wouldn't put post-its on the floor. And then we sort of come up with the sort of shorthand, version. It's funny when you say the official title of these pieces, I have no idea what they're actually called any longer, because we have our own, we've been talking about these pieces for so long. They're these little friends that we've made, and we're oh yeah, that one, with Daniel sliding or something. It's not even called that. So anyhow, we got all our note cards lined up. We were able to edit down our ideas so that we had kind of a reasonable number.
Yeah.
Or I think what we thought was a reasonable number. And then we went into spreadsheet mode, which is our
spreadsheet mode, where we started to really imagine how would these pieces flow into one another? How would we record the sound on these? How would we record the video on these? And like estimating how long they would take, really what materials we would have to gather, because each piece is kind of its own little universe of problems to solve. And once we kind of had this like very rainbowy spreadsheet, we got to kind of I would say like maybe the saddest part, which was like cutting pieces, right? Like where we're like, the editing process is always the most fruitful and painful part, I feel like, of all artist projects, where you have this like all of these things and ideas, and you're like, oh, this one not yet. Like this has to be cut aside for another time. So refining it down so that it would be just like the best possible choices for film. And Cassie, you mentioned like our limiting factors, where we're thinking about black and white and film. And when we're thinking about film, we're really thinking about like what pieces could be special to capture on film, not just like, oh, you know, that would work on film, or I think we could get to a live performance if we filmed this, or like it'd be like the similar thing. It was really like, what could film and the film properties like lend to these pieces that wouldn't be possible in other formats. So we really edited out like what pieces are best served by this medium, and really kind of create a tight kind of arc. And we were thinking a lot about inspired by kind of like a Rube Goldberg machine, or like a tapestry, where each piece kind of triggers the next one, and sometimes in obvious or like kind of bizarre and disorienting ways. And that was a really important kind of shape maker for us, because we were really thinking about like, oh, how do you like move through and experience these pieces? Oh, this one is peaceful, this one's maybe surprising, this is funny, and creating a like experiential arc through the pieces, which meant some of the pieces had to be put by the wayside for another film.
I know, right? We've got like a huge database of like pieces we have not done. But that's okay. Life's a long time. We'll do them some other time. So we had we had this. We did not photograph anyone's aura, which was on the list of things we wanted to do. We did not time lapse an inflatable bounce house being set up and then taken down.
There was
some
really there's another film. You'll just have to all beg us for it, and we'll do another 2 years of planning.
Another Fluxus event.
So then we like started filming, and we ended up having 5 days of filming, which is a lot for us. Usually, you know, we're more in like the 1 or 2 days of filming for Music for Inbox, but this was a project that we let take a long time, kind of unfold and take the time it needed. And that ended up being 5 days of filming, and 4 different locations. So the first location was my studio, where I am now, to film Ben Bautier's monochrome for Yves Klein, and Yoko Ono's lighting piece. Should I just read the scores to give some context for that?
Yeah, that makes sense. It will take 1 second.
Great. So monochrome for Yves Klein. Performer paints a large white panel black, and then lighting piece. Light a match and watch it till it goes out. So those were the 2 pieces. And I think it's probably like 10 words, but we spent an entire day filming them.
And happily so. I mean, I think another part of this film that's worth mentioning is that with Fluxus, our relationship is very different to other pieces that we have. Like there's pieces where it's like, I want to play that piece on my instrument, right? Or I want to compose that piece. But in this one, we just want them to like exist in the world. So it's very different. Like it was for the painting piece and the match piece, I am, I suppose, performing, but that was just because like you're better at filming than me. It wasn't because like I need to strike it. Well, I'm better at lighting matches than you. Really.
Oh yeah, a lot better. We tested that.
But regardless, it's not about like I'm in the camera or you're in the front of the camera. It's more just that we really, really, we just want this piece to be in the world, and this is the vehicle to deliver it. So for the, I mean, do we spoil the magic trick with the,
Well, let's just give a spoiler alert. We're about to spoil all the magic tricks in this. So you can like pause now, go watch the film if this is after June 20th and come back, or you can just be someone who likes spoilers, which I can relate to in other ways. So yeah. So we
started with the Yves, with the
monochrome.
Monochrome, right?
Yes. So that is to paint, the performer paints a large white panel black. And this is a piece that I'd been really interested in doing since like early 2020. It was like just a thing that I'd been obsessed about, like this idea of painting a large white panel black. But I was really interested in like what film could offer this piece that maybe live performance couldn't. And so we did kind of a magic trick with it, where there's a big white backdrop we set up, and then we mounted a piece of clear plexiglass in front of the big white backdrop, and then painted the plexiglass black. And so what it feels like to watch it is the screen, which is the large panel, is being painted black, but you're on like the wrong side of the painting. You're on the side of the painting that you could never be on in the real world. And you know, it was one of those ideas that I was like wanted to see just really badly, but I didn't know exactly what it would look like. So Cassia painted the plexiglass, and it's just, I don't know about you, Cassie, but it feels to me almost like you're just like being hugged by black paint, like slowly,
That's the thing about it was so cool, that you had this idea, we chose the piece, and then, but like when it actually, we watched it, I remember because I drove home that day, and you like quickly put together some version, and it was like, holy smokes, this really works.
Yeah.
Like it's really impactful. And yeah, it just feels like, you know, there's a little paint here, and there's a little here, and then it kind of just like closes in, and then you're all warm, and it's like in this black space, and then there's like little boop, boop, like kind of filling in the gaps.
And what we really discovered through that piece, something we didn't think about ahead of time, but then started to lean into more as we developed it, was that it really disorients scale. Like you can't quite tell, like your entire field of vision, which is truly the largest panel we can create on film, is going from white to black. So it is a large panel going from white to black, but it's hard to tell exactly like how big it is in the real world, or like how big Cassia's hand is. Feels like, well, wait, where am I? And so like scale and positioning became this like really kind of fun thing to play with in this film that we just didn't realize until we started kind of diving into the actual process of doing it. So that was, we just kind of did strange things physically. Like I was kneeling on the floor with my hand over my head. So like, and you can't see my face at all, just this hand. So that's like, what is this angle? Like what's happening in this world? And so then we shot Match Piece, which was lighting piece, I should say. We've just started calling it Match Piece. Please do not Google any of the names of these pieces because we are going to butcher them. But Lighting Piece by Yoko Ono. And we lit, several matches. Of course, it's completely dark, so I can't tell where my hands are as compared to the camera until the match is lit, at which point I cannot move it in front of the camera. So there was some like rehearsals. And then it was a question of picking our favorite. I mean, there was one that burnt almost to the quick. I mean, it was just like it died right before my fingers. And then there was other ones that were just like, so that was great. We did not set off the smoke alarm. We were able to get Match Piece. And then we had this. Well, part of the interesting kind of disorientation is that when the panel gets painted black, you think you're in black paint, but suddenly you're just in darkness. And that's where Match Piece alert emerges from. So there's this kind of play with space, like where am I in any given moment? Like what am I swimming in? Am I in paint? Am I in darkness? And that's just a really fun thing that we can do with film that we couldn't do in a live performance. It was really fun to kind of shape those sensations.
Yeah, definitely. We wouldn't have been able to like in a performance, like plunge people into that level of darkness where they wouldn't have known a match was going to be lit. I mean, it's just your eyes would adapt. Yeah, and then we go to a kind of I guess we went to our next location, really, which was in Human Resources LA, down in Chinatown in Los Angeles. And for this one, we had other people in front of the camera because, again, we just wanted this piece to happen, and we needed to both be behind the camera so that we could work the magic tricks. And Jen got to use a gimbal, which is very exciting. And so we cut to, I guess I can read.
So this is
whole thing.
This is 3 pieces are in this section in HR, and we crafted it so that these 3 pieces are like just one continual flow of performance and ideas, which was really special to us because usually in a concert you have to like do a piece, pause, do a piece, pause. But because we could guide the audience eyes with a gimbal, we could kind of bring people on this journey through 3 pieces. So the 3 pieces were Duet for Full Bottle and Wine Glass, which is one of George Machunas' graph scores, where you map out a bunch of actions on a graph like shaking, slow dripping, pouring, splashing, roll bottle, and that was performed by Jen Wong. And then that kind of transitioned into Wind Music Number 2 by Miko Shiomi. And this score is: several performers operate fans towards suspended objects such as bottles, radios, bells, etc., making them swing. So when we saw the word bottle, we were like, ooh, what if bottle piece then got hung on this rack to be blown around in wind piece? And then wind piece transitions into a piece called Shadow Piece by Miko Shiomi as well. Make shadows, still or moving, of your body or something on the road, wall, floor, or anything else. Catch the shadows by some means. So we caught the shadows on film, and the shadows were of this wind music. So do you want to kind of describe what that looked like, Cassia?
Sure. We connected I guess Daniel Corral brought in a percussion stand and set it up, and then we hung kind of like wind chimes, I suppose, actual wind chimes, and some plastic bottles and some other kind of metal objects. Richard Ahn was there as well, and he conveniently lives with 2 percussionists, so we had a lot of cool objects. And Jen, of course, not Jen Bewerse, Jen Wong is a percussionist herself, so there was like other objects that she brought. And so everyone kind of hung their favorites, and there was a banjo, I think, hanging. And so we had some rehearsals where people were kind of listening to them bonk into each other and sort of picked like a density that we liked. And then Colbert Davis did the audio engineering, which, I mean, if you tell an audio engineer, like, hi, we are going to record wind, they're like, pass.
Please don't leave me.
But he was able to rig up the microphone so that we could record the wind without actually recording wind.
And if you haven't tried recording wind before, try blowing into your phone microphone once, and you'll know exactly what it sounds. So like basically the world's ending and like a awful sound. So yeah, the performers were literally pointing electric fans or box fans of various sizes at these objects that were just like swinging and hitting each other and clashing, and it's this beautiful kind of whooshing, tinkling, clanging sound. And Colbert also has helped us set up a harsh light on that performance, which cast beautiful shadows of these swinging, clanging objects. So those were the shadows we captured for Shadow Piece.
Right.
We kind of transitioned the gimbal over and saw the kind of shadowy, swinging objects. And then Daniel Corral walked through that shadow. So you also captured, like it said, your body. We also captured someone walking.
Yeah.
And that brought us to our next shoot, unless there's something else we should say about human resources.
No, it's great. And like we were able to get that really big ringy inside kind of sound. So this was really the first music part of the piece. Before that, it's the sound of me painting plexiglass and striking a match. And then, of course, we hear Jen, and she's actually, I think, performing real music at that point. I mean, she's
gargling
and yeah. And then we have the 3 percussionists all activating the sort of percussion station, which is very ringy and exciting. And then Daniel, we capture his shadow, and then he goes to his next filming location, which was Lacey Park in San Marino.
Mm-hmm.
And in one of the more hilarious things we've ever done, we captured Daniel's shadow running. So he starts out walking, and then he goes to a full run.
Yes.
So if you can imagine Jen with a gimbal holding her camera and me behind her with the zoom on a stick, and then Daniel actually running, and the 3 of us sort of running kind of like tethered together somehow, like in the most awful 3-legged race you can imagine. Just to, I guess, I don't know, 100 yards or something through Lacey Park. But just capturing.
Looking very suspicious to everyone else there, because why are these 3 people running with cameras in the park? But we were capturing Daniel's shadow moving from walking to running, which was our kind of transition moment from the walking shadows in HR to this very cool piece that we've been obsessed with for a really long time called Figure Ground.
Yes. So this one just says, wear white clothes and skid into the landscape. And so this one, I mean, we had so many ideas of how to do this, but we settled on a great sort of just shot of Lacey Park, just those green grass in the park, and then trees. And Daniel just like runs his little legs through the thing and just slides and stands up and walks off screen. And I mean, when it happened, we were both just like, you know, we couldn't speak because of course we're recording the audio, but it actually worked. I mean, I think I imagined in my mind what that could look like, right? I was imagining like the best version of that. And then I was saying, well, of course what's going to happen is, you know, he's just going to kind of run and kind of go like, oh, and then sort of, I don't know, but Daniel brought it, I have to say.
And we got incredibly lucky because all of that rain in Los Angeles made the grass slick and muddy. So he actually got probably like 10 feet of sliding in the landscape.
No, he did it.
Epic.
Yeah. And also we should mention he was wearing like a white painter's suit that I have here. And so he's like wearing this white suit. This is going well. It's giant. Daniel is not a tiny person. And then he slid. And so it got all like muddy and there was a lot of green in this a while ago, but that all died. So anyhow, he just kind of got all
because
muddy
the score again is wear white clothes and skid into the landscape. So it's not talking about like the result, like, oh, your white clothes are going to get dirty. But like when you read the score, you imagine like, oh, yeah, if they skid into landscapes, depending on what the landscape is, the white clothes are going to get covered in like dirt or dust or mud or grass. But we were really, so you kind of intellectually know, kind of referring to what we were talking about earlier, where you imagine this piece, you know, okay, like there'll be some level of sliding, who knows how successful that'll be, and there'll be some level of dirt on the clothes. But the magic of actually experiencing it with this very lucky timing where like the rain had made everything slick enough to get an incredible slide. Daniel just committed fully to the moment also, which meant an incredible slide. And then when he stood up, we were just both like, because of the way the grass and mud had basically created this painting on the coveralls that was beautiful. It was really magical. Beyond just like the delight of sliding, it was just this beautiful creation that came from this action that you can't predict. You just until you do it.
Yeah. No, I think that one I was like, okay, the movie is, whatever happens in the rest of the movie, I'm fine because it actually worked. So then of course we moved this into Opus 11 by Eric Anderson, which means an occurrence or part of an occurrence is recorded and played back. So we play Daniel sliding backwards, which is so delightful. You just have to see it. Yeah, there's this kind of fun thing that you can do with a lot of Fluxus pieces where you can kind of like, it's like a Russian nesting doll, where like when Daniel's sliding into the landscape, he's performing Larry Miller's
figure ground, right? He's sliding in white clothing into the landscape, but he's secretly also performing the first half of Eric Anderson's Opus 11, which is to an occurrence or part of an occurrence is recorded. We were recording it in video and then played back. And that could be interpreted two different ways. Played back could just literally mean like just by playing that film for you, we've played it. But we interpret it to mean play back as in like backwards. So Daniel slides into the landscape, and then you can just imagine what happens when it's played backwards. It's very delightful.
It's great. Okay, well, and then we just sort of we were inside for a bit, and then we were outside for a bit, and then we just jumped back inside.
Yes.
And we are just at my house, and we meet Carolyn Chen, who is just instantly performing Yoko Ono's Laundry piece, which is in entertaining your guests, bring out your laundry of the day and explain to them about each item, how and when it became dirty and why, etc. And Carolyn was absolutely the performer for this piece. And she just talks about her laundry. And it's fantastic because that piece is, we chose it because it's really celebrating kind of domesticity. Not celebrating, but shining a light on it. And I mean, Carolyn's almost too good because that piece can get kind of tedious in a great way, as does laundry, as does I'll do all of these household chores and tasks. But she just has her family's laundry on the counter, and she's just going through piece by piece. It's really soothing, actually.
And the piece is by Yoko Ono, and these pieces are really significant in the history of Fluxus because it was one of the, I think at the time, few music movements that was really kind of including women on a at least more equal plane. So a lot of women composers and artists were making these feminist pieces that brought, actions and tasks that were, typically looked down on or not seen as special or important or worth exploring because they were like women's work. And so a piece like Laundry Piece that, imagine I think it was written in 1963. So in 1963, there's a piece where someone talks about their laundry. That's a really radical kind of feminist perspective to elevate this look down upon women's work into a moment that's artful and given importance by the fact that it's given a moment to just be this meaningful task. So it's really special. And it connects to the previous one you can imagine. So Daniel slides to the landscape,
right,
clothes
and then
get grass stained, and then we head to some laundry. It's a little tongue-in-cheek, but really delightful.
Oh yeah, we're not against sort of like the dad joke level of
Flux's dad jokes.
Flux's dad jokes. So anyhow, so then Carolyn's in the house and she shakes out her laundry, and then we cut to her folding is it 6 feet?
Yep,
or 2 yards? Yeah, a 2-yard paper bird or paper glider. And Carolyn's actually pretty good at origami, I think, right? But that was just sort of a bonus. She's just a great performer.
It's this piece by Milan Nizak, Glider, folded 2-yard paper bird, parentheses, paper glider. And that's such an interesting score because I feel like when you remember it, somehow you remember and fly it. Fly it, the airplane, fly the paper glider. But it's not a part of the piece. It's just folded.
No.
And then what? You have this giant paper airplane. Then what? And I think that in a way this piece there's a lot of anticipation in this piece. Oh my God, that's the biggest paper airplane. I called them paper airplanes growing up. It's the biggest paper airplane I've ever seen. But the piece doesn't go on. It's just.
But it's so big. I don't
big.
think people understand. You make one with an 8.5 by 11, right? No, this is giant. And Carolyn's not a massive person, also. So I mean, there were moments where she's just struggling to make this
her
fold.
Foot on one end, her hands on the other end. It's unwieldy. It's kind of exciting, but it's also incredibly quiet. So you have this kind of contrast of emotions where on the one hand you're well, first of all, what is this? why is this paper so big? Oh my gosh, it's an airplane. I can't wait to see it flying. And you're never
No,
going to see it
it's
flying. So it's like
not.
this roller coaster of feelings. But the actual sound is just like crinkling, right? Like
Mhm.
very beautiful
Well,
crinkling
and,
sound.
and Carolyn like traipsing around the room as she attempts to fold this
Yeah.
thing, right? I mean, she's got into like various yoga poses to sort of like get it all folded. And she's really a great performer for this also because she just commits to the action at hand, and it's not performative in any way. She's doing the thing, and that is the performance.
Not like hammy or like act it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And then that goes into this piece, Micro One. Is this the one?
Kosugi.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I was just double checking that was the right composer. It says, wrap a live microphone with a very large sheet of paper. Make a tight bundle. Keep the microphone live for another 5 minutes. So
we just happen to have a large sheet of paper.
We were just we have this giant paper glider that has been assembled, and so Carolyn takes. We were like, what is the most microphone-looking microphone?
SM58.
So she's got it, turns on the button, sticks it in the paper, and just starts crinkling it up, and that's when the audio cuts. Immediately cuts to the sound only of that handheld microphone and not the room mics.
Which is another special thing we can do because this is film. We can just eliminate the room sound and just put everyone's head exactly in this piece of paper, which is kind of, it's just a perspective you could never get in a live situation. As much as you would turn, amplification up or whatever, you would never totally eliminate the fact that you're sitting in a room. So it's like a really special perspective that we're able to create because we're filming instead of live performance.
Yeah. And I think that, just the sound of, I don't know, it's just an amazing sound to be have your head inside this piece of paper and hear what's happening. So and she wrapped a really tight bundle. Like it was like she was,
it looks like a rose.
It's really beautiful. And that crinkling paper is pretty much sort of the last sound you hear on our film. So that was, I guess, that's sort of
that's the wild ride that is the film, and kind of like the thinking and the process that went behind it. It was a lot of surprises, a lot of like openness to discovering what would happen. And I think it's important maybe to note that like as much as we were like open to anything happen, there was like a kind of special style of planning that both like creates like clear enough containers that we can achieve a project of this scale, get it done, like have it sound good, have it look good, but also like so be like super precise, enabling us to do this, but also really flexible to allow for some of this like discovery and learning. And that looks like, for example, when we were in my studio filming the painting the panel black and the match, we really weren't sure what it would be like to film those. So we didn't put ourselves on a tight time schedule where we have 2 hours to perform this to record this piece. We left ourselves like a whole morning, afternoon to just do it. Whereas other pieces that were, we had more kind of a clear idea of what would happen. We didn't need to leave ourselves that timing flexibility. But it was like a really kind of specific style of planning this film to like leave room and also get the best possible outcome out of what we were doing.
Yeah, I agree. I'm pretty excited about like the film, but we've also got the postcard companion that's going with this film.
Can I tell the story of it?
Sure,
okay.
Yeah.
So we filmed this piece, I can never remember the real name, the landscape police, Figure Ground, where Daniel slid into the landscape. We already showed you kind of the amazing grass scene. And we were driving home, and all of a sudden, I was like, and I called Cassia, and then like a burble of sound, and like, Cassia, the coveralls have to be our postcard. It has to be the mail art this month. Like, it's so beautiful. It's like a painting. And there's also kind of this history in Fluxus of objects being elevated to art. And so it's just so fitting, as we kind of talked through the idea, realized just how fitting it would be to the Fluxus movement to like have one of the objects that was a result of a performance become an art object of itself. And then also in the style, so I guess we'll say what we're doing. So
do you want me to
we have
show the
these,
postcard, or do you have
yeah,
one?
I've got the postcard.
Oh, okay.
You show the coveralls. That's what they're
Okay.
called. So we photographed the coveralls, and there's
them
this
here.
amazing grass stain. And here you see a printed kind of close-up of what the grass stain looks like. But the final version, which we're fabricating on Friday, the final version, we're going to cut up the coveralls and adhere a 1 by 1 inch section of the grass stains to each grass stain to each postcard. So everyone will get their kind of own tiny painting or tiny piece of this coverall. And because it's cut up and destroyed, it will no longer exist. So there's kind of this ephemerality to it that's like it's like really characteristic of a lot of Fluxus work, that there's a kind of, it's here and now it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
So it will be spread out to all of the people who are lovely subscribers and buy tickets, and you'll each get your own tiny grass stain painting. That's a result of the performance. So we're really excited about that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess sort of like a final thing that I was thinking about this morning was that, all of the stuff that Jen and I do with Music for Your Inbox, it's very like meticulous and planned and organized. And yet when we go to make art together, it's somewhat chaotic and sort of embracing this disorienting feeling. And I guess, we're trying to sort of infuse some of that into this larger project of Music for Your Inbox, of having a little bit of chaos in there. So that's what this month is really about. Mm-hmm. It's about, I guess, the delight of those tiny moments of like, what is happening here? And also just like, oh my gosh, they actually did that.
Right.
In case you were worried that people weren't doing things, it's still happening. So we are selling tickets to this, access to see this video. And of course we're mailing pieces of mail art with the cotton, I guess this is that cotton swatch on the corner. And tickets are available through the 15th of this month. Mm-hmm. And then we'll put it in an envelope and mail it to you, and you can have your own piece of Fluxus ephemera.
Yes. And I think we should just do the thing and thank you to everyone who helped make this project. Jen Wong, Daniel Corral, Carolyn Chen, and Richard Ahn for their incredible performances. Colbert Davis for recording sound for us. Tim Feeney for making the sound really special and amazing. HRLA, Human Resources Los Angeles, for letting us use your incredible space to record portions of this film. And finally, the Eastside Arts Initiative, who has provided funds in support of making this piece of mail art and film happen.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Well, unless there are any questions or things we missed, I think that is the long saga of FluxConcert coming out this month.
Yeah. So join us on the internet.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye.